I have gone through these events so many times in my head that I no longer know what is real and what is my own reconstruction. It's probably best to start from the beginning, as well as I can. I want to be clear that I'm writing this for my own sake, to sort out my thoughts. Maybe in another life I would have written this on an online forum or told a close friend, but I've realized that I no longer trust my own judgment. All that remains is the pen, the paper, and the words I can shape. My name is Ben. I'm 34 years old. My wife's name is Heather. She's 31. Heather Elizabeth, to be exact. We've been married for almost 7 years. 7 years is a long time, but not long enough to feel done with each other. I always thought we had more to give. In the early days of our marriage, we were like any happy couple. Our friends often said we seemed harmonious. We laughed a lot. Not forced laughter, but genuine, light-hearted laughter, as if the air between us was filled with humor and warmth. We traveled occasionally, not often, but enough. We had good dinners, invited friends and family. Everything was, well, balanced, good, stable. But nothing lasts forever. I don't know exactly when the change began. Maybe I noticed it too late. Maybe I should have been more attentive, but who goes around prepared for their wife to turn away and become someone else? Who counts on that happening? I had my job, my life, and I thought she had hers, but that we were still moving forward together. I remember first noticing a change in the way she spoke to me. Not what she said, but her tone. It was more reserved, a bit distant, as if she didn't have the energy to invest in our conversations. At first, I thought she was tired, maybe overworked. She has a fairly demanding job as a systems administrator at a mid-sized company, and sometimes she had to work late. I remember how one evening I asked her if everything was okay. She said she was stressed. I accepted that. I suppose I should have asked more, but I was afraid of seeming pushy. Silly, but humans are often afraid of small confrontations, especially when we're not sure something is actually wrong. Time passed. Weeks turned into months. I started noticing how she increasingly clung to her phone. She took it everywhere. If it chimed and I happened to be nearby, she'd turn off the screen instantly. I wasn't stupid. I understood that she was hiding something, but I still couldn't pinpoint what. I tried asking who she was texting, just casually, but she gave short, dismissive answers. Just work. A friend. Nothing important. Meanwhile, she started coming home late. Not every night, but more often than before. I asked why she was late, and she always said it was something she needed to fix or that she'd been out with friends. Sometimes I called her when she worked late, but then she would often sound stressed, curt, as if irritated that I was disturbing her. I thought maybe I was a bad husband for not trusting her, that perhaps I was becoming a jealous type, which I'd never been before. But there were so many small details that didn't add up. Then there was a strange period. After several weeks of cool distance, Heather suddenly started acting as she used to, even more affectionate than ever. It was like she was compensating for something. Suddenly, she wanted to kiss me more often, be close, talk about the future. It was like an exaggerated version of how we used to be. You know, like when a child suddenly becomes very good and sweet after doing something wrong and is afraid of being caught. I felt it in my gut. This wasn't real. She was performing for me. But why? Was she feeling guilty about something? Or was she trying to hide something else by showering me with love so I wouldn't suspect? That only made me more suspicious. I started seeing patterns where I wasn't sure they existed. She received texts at odd times, smiled secretively when she thought I wasn't looking. I tried checking her phone once when she was in the shower, but she had changed her password. We had always been open with each other's phones. We'd share funny videos, read each other's messages when, for example, we were driving and one of us needed help replying. Now that was over. One evening, she said she was going out with her friends. It was a Friday, and I was off the next day. She kissed me and said, "Don't worry if I come home late." I smiled, but inside I was boiling with anxiety. This time I decided to follow her. I felt like a villain, one of those insecure types you read about in cheap crime novels, but I had to know, for my own peace of mind. I took my car and kept my distance. She drove downtown and stopped at a bar I knew but rarely visited. She parked and went inside. I waited a few minutes, then went in as well. The bar was dimly lit and atmospheric, perfect for discreet meetings. I took a seat behind a pillar, ordered a beer, and pretended to look at my phone. It took me a few seconds to spot her. She was seated in a booth in the corner, and she wasn't alone. A man sat beside her, maybe a few years younger than me, or around her age. Hard to say in the dim light. But I could make out their body language. They sat close, laughed, touched each other's hands. Then he leaned in and kissed her, a slow, natural kiss. She kissed him back without hesitation. I nearly lost my breath. It felt as if the floor dropped out beneath me. In that moment, something in me died. I don't know how I got out of the bar. I only know I drove home in a haze of tears and rage. At home, it was quiet and empty. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My wife, my Heather, had just kissed another man. Right before my eyes. I needed answers. Was this a one-time thing? Was she in love with him? Had this affair been going on for a while? I knew she kept a diary. She'd had that habit as long as I could remember. Maybe I could find answers there. I searched through her bedside table and found a notebook with an elastic band around it. I opened it and began to read. Every page filled with her rounded handwriting, short passages of thoughts, feelings, and confessions. It didn't take long to find passages about her infidelity. She mentioned the man by name, Derek. He was a few years younger than her, worked in another department of the same company. They had started talking almost a year ago, first at the office, then over Messenger, then meeting in secret. She described how exciting it was. In shock, I read how she described their meetings. Sometimes she went into detail. It hurt, but I had to read on. I turned the pages of the diary with trembling hands, my heart pounding hard. The pages were filled with her innermost thoughts and feelings about the affair. She described how she had submitted to Derek and just gone along with the things he did with her. I felt nauseous. I forced myself to keep reading, as if more information could help me understand why she was doing this. I learned that this was no one-time fling. It had been going on for over a year. While I had been walking around thinking her coldness toward me was just a phase, she had been sharing her life, her body, with another man. And at the same time that she was cheating, some days she'd been incredibly loving toward me, like an actress in a twisted play. I don't know how long I sat there reading that diary. Eventually, I heard her keys in the door. It was past 2 in the morning. I didn't want to talk to her. I was sure I'd break down if I did. I hid the book and quickly stripped off my clothes, got under the blanket and pretended to sleep. I heard her moving about downstairs. After half an hour, she came upstairs and lay down. She didn't even shower. God. I didn't move a muscle and tried to breathe calmly, like someone who's asleep. She lay close to me and fell asleep quickly. I felt my skin crawl. I wanted out of there. So I lay still, and when I was sure she was asleep, I slipped out of her embrace. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and curled up in a fetal position. Eventually, I fell asleep. But I dreamed of her, me, and Derek. Of betrayal, emotions, sex, and divorce. I woke up to her knocking on the door. I explained that I'd fallen asleep in there because I'd felt ill during the night, which was entirely true. I should probably have confronted her right then. I should have screamed and packed my bags. But I did none of that. I did nothing. Why? Because I was scared? Because I loved her too much to lose her? Because I hoped it would pass? I don't know. I only know that I entered a state of denial and submission. The following months were hell. Every time she went to work, my stomach knotted up. I started writing a diary myself. I documented my feelings in detail, what I read about her and what I knew she was up to. I read her diary regularly. She answered almost all the questions I had there. She wasn't in love. It was just pure, raw lust. She often fantasized about him and what he did to her, even when we were together. She had several times been with him and then come home to me immediately afterward. This made me stop having sex with her. I blamed tiredness, stress, whatever I could come up with, anything to avoid it. I felt so humiliated. After a few months, I noticed that she became irritated with me. She even lashed out at me a couple of times. Once, when she yelled at me, I said, "Maybe you should find someone on the side." She fell silent, completely shocked. After that, she never mentioned it again. I could read about her frustration over my refusal in her diary. She didn't understand why I didn't want to and why I wouldn't say it like it was. My comment about getting someone on the side had hit her hard. She wrote that she got cold and terrified that it would show on her that she was already being regularly taken by another man. But she missed being with me because she wrote that she loved me. The tone of this revelation was almost surprised, as if she hadn't really counted on that. Every time she went away overnight with friends or on a girls' trip, I knew exactly what she was doing. Once, I ran into one of the women she claimed was on the trip with her. I talked to her a bit and said, "I hope you had fun on the trip with Heather." Then I faked a phone call so she couldn't ask what I meant. My goal was for her to ask Heather and give her something to worry about. She did. Heather was really shaken, but I never said anything else about it so she couldn't know. I noted this in my diary. Sometimes when I was doing the laundry, I'd see her underwear full of stains. I found a pair of panties that were torn to shreds. She wrote in her diary that they had experimented with dominance and submission, and that things had gotten wild. My mental state took a hard hit. I lost all joy in life. Everything was dark, everything was black. Nothing amused me. I looked forward to nothing. I avoided her as much as possible. No hugs, no cuddling. I always declined when she asked. I smiled at parties, but inside I was a wreck, and I seriously considered just leaving her. Not saying anything, just going. She probably noticed I had changed. I became quieter, more withdrawn. I wrote about how everything I had read, all the feelings eating me alive, were consuming me inside. I wrote that I felt like a loser, a coward who didn't dare defend his own pride. I wrote about how it hurt to pretend everything was normal when I knew what she was doing when she worked late or went out with friends. I wrote about how I sometimes wanted to scream that I knew everything, but the words got stuck in my throat. Every day I recorded my own downfall on those pages. Heather began to suspect something was wrong. I read about it in her diary. She wrote that I seemed distant, that I sometimes said strange things. I gave her hints, subtle comments about places and times she had mentioned for Derek in her diary. Maybe I would say something about that bar by the harbor, even though we never went there. Or mention how a certain perfume smelled like something you might wear at a secret meeting. Little things that could be innocent on their own, but together formed a pattern. A pattern that said, "I know what you're doing." I guess she got worried. In her diary, she wrote that she was afraid I knew, but she wasn't sure. I continued to act clueless. We lived a bizarre double life. She was unfaithful but played the wife. I was betrayed but played the husband. We watched movies together, went to dinners with friends, bought groceries and shared a bed but never had sex or even hugged or kissed. A year passed. I should have ended it earlier. I should have packed and left. But I didn't. Instead, I walked around with a constant knot in my stomach, slept poorly, ate poorly. I felt like crap. I was almost completely emotionally numb by then. Nothing felt real. Life was a meaningless series of betrayals and silence. I lost over 30 pounds in weight. One day, on my way home from work, something happened that changed everything. I crashed the car. A moment's inattention, a van running a red light, and I couldn't swerve in time. The impact was violent. I only remember the sound of shattering glass and crumpling metal, how the steering wheel pressed against my chest. When I woke up, I was in the hospital with broken bones and internal injuries. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. Heather sat by my side, holding my hand, crying. I didn't know what to feel about that. Her tears confused me. Was it a performance or remorse? Then I lay there in the hospital bed thinking that maybe if I died, I'd be free of all the pain. But I didn't die. I survived. She took care of me. Or well, she brought me things from home. Clean clothes, acted like the perfect caring wife. All while I thought about what she had been doing behind my back for over a year. It was when she was fetching some things for me that she found my diary. I had hidden it fairly well, but apparently not well enough. I don't know what she thought when she saw it. Maybe she got curious. Maybe she suspected what it contained. In any case, she read it, from start to finish. I didn't know she had read it until later, but I did notice changes in her behavior again. She became quiet, held my hand without speaking. looked as if she had been crying nonstop. Then suddenly, one day, she didn't come to the hospital. The nurses said she herself had been admitted to another ward, that she had suffered a breakdown. She had panic attacks and harmed herself. Apparently, the anxiety and guilt over her infidelity, and now the undeniable knowledge that I knew everything, had overwhelmed her. Later, much later, when we were both back home and sitting at the kitchen table, she told me what happened when she read my diary. She said she read every page and started to realize how long I had known, how I had let her continue, how I had suffered in silence. She then understood the magnitude of her betrayal, how she had not only deceived me but also subjected me to a kind of psychological torture. She said it felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, and that she herself had pushed me off, and then, when I was hanging on by my fingertips, she just stood there watching without saving me. That's when she broke down, she said. She felt she didn't deserve to live, that she was a monster. She cut herself and panicked, and when she couldn't breathe anymore, she called an ambulance herself. I sat there listening. It was surreal to hear her describe her breakdown, to understand that she too was now in a kind of hell, one she had created herself. What did I feel then? I wish I could say I felt relief, that I forgave her, or that I hated her with all my heart. But I felt nothing. I was empty. I had gone through so many layers of emotion, anger, sorrow, betrayal, confusion, fear, that I had nothing left to give. When she told me all this, it was like watching a silent movie. I saw her mouth move, heard the words, but inside me everything remained silent. Now, as I write this, some time has passed. I'm recovering physically from the accident, but mentally I'm still broken. Heather is fragile too. She's in therapy trying to understand why she did what she did. In her diary, she had documented everything in detail, many of the sexual encounters, what they did, and how exciting she thought it was. And I have been fed all this information over a long period, and my feelings for her have simply died. I've informed her that I intend to file for divorce and have asked a lawyer to prepare the papers. She broke down when I made my decision. I was afraid she might do something stupid, but she never did, at least not so far. She understands why. She wants us to try again, but I can't handle it. I'm completely shattered, and I want to live on my own to see if that will help me heal. My diary now lies in a box, and I haven't had the strength to read her diary again. The memories are enough. Sometimes I wish she had just been honest from the start, that she had said, "Ben, I'm not happy," and maybe we could have done something about it. Instead, I was punished for my gullibility, my trust, my love. Living with the knowledge that she was unfaithful for over a year while I let her carry on is heavy. I see it as cowardice on my part too. I should have stood up for myself, but I didn't. And I have to live with that. In the end, this is our story. A story of betrayal, silence, fear, and guilt. Of two people who lost each other along the way and then destroyed what little remained of trust. But I will never forget the feeling when I saw her with that other man in the bar. That's when my world fell apart. Now I'll do my best to heal and find some kind of meaning in life again.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.